On the night of her 60th birthday, Evelyn Moore found a silver watch in her husband's locked drawer. At first, she thought it was a forgotten gift. Then she saw the engraving on the back. To Adrian. Wait for me. Evelyn. Her hands went cold. Adrian Vale was the man she had loved before her husband. The man who disappeared 35 years ago without a goodbye. The man everyone said had left town because he was too afraid to love her properly. But the watch was not the worst part. The watch had stopped at 9:17 p.m., the exact time Adrian vanished. And underneath it, hidden inside a yellow envelope, was a note in her husband's handwriting. She must never know he came back. Evelyn looked toward the dining room, where her husband was laughing with their guests and raising a glass to 40 years of marriage. And for the first time in her life, she wondered if the man she had slept beside for decades had not saved her from heartbreak. Maybe he had stolen the truth and called it love. Evelyn Moore had not wanted a party. 60 felt too loud for balloons, too heavy for speeches, too honest for candles. But Thomas insisted. He said a woman only turned 60 once, and a good husband did not let such a moment pass quietly. So the house filled with people, neighbors, friends, former co-workers, their daughter Rachel with her 2 children, Thomas's old law partners, all carrying bottles of wine and stories about what a loyal man he had always been. Evelyn smiled because she had spent 40 years learning how. Thomas stood near the fireplace, silver-haired and handsome in the way older men become when the world has always forgiven them. He raised his glass and spoke about devotion, about patience, about choosing the same person every morning. Everyone clapped. Evelyn kissed his cheek. No one noticed that her hands were shaking. She had been restless all evening, though she could not explain why. Maybe it was the age. Maybe it was the way Thomas kept watching her whenever someone mentioned the past. Or maybe some part of her had known that a locked drawer upstairs was waiting to end the life she thought she understood. The discovery happened because of something simple. Her grandson spilled juice on his shirt, and Evelyn went upstairs to find an old towel. In Thomas's study, the closet was empty, so she opened the bottom drawer of his desk. It was locked. That alone should not have frightened her. But she knew that desk. She had dusted it for years. She had placed coffee beside it when Thomas worked late. She had never known the bottom drawer had a lock. In the top drawer, under his old reading glasses, she found a small brass key. She should have left it alone. But there are moments when a woman does not decide to search for the truth. Her hand simply moves before fear can stop it. The key turned. Inside the drawer was a flat black box. Evelyn opened it. The first thing she saw was the silver watch. For a second, she did not understand. Then memory struck her so hard she had to sit down. She had bought that watch when she was 24 from a tiny pawn shop near the train station. Adrian Vale had laughed when she gave it to him because he said men like him did not own things that looked expensive. It isn't expensive, Evelyn had said. It's a promise. He had turned it over and read the engraving. To Adrian. Wait for me, Evelyn. Then he kissed her in the rain and told her he would wait as long as the watch kept ticking. 3 weeks later, he disappeared. No note, no call, nothing. Thomas, who had been Adrian's friend then, was the one who told her Adrian had left town. Thomas said Adrian had always been restless, that he loved freedom more than people, that sometimes a man runs because staying would make him ordinary. Evelyn hated Adrian for 1 year, missed him for 10, buried him inside herself for 35. Now his watch lay in her husband's locked drawer, stopped at 9:17. Beneath it was a yellow envelope. Inside was a photograph of Adrian outside the Old Harbor Theater. He was older in the photo, not 25, maybe 40, maybe more. His hair had changed, but his eyes were unmistakable. On the back, someone had written, "He came back." She never knew. Evelyn heard laughter downstairs. Then Thomas's voice. "My wife is the best thing that ever happened to me." The words made her feel sick. At the bottom of the envelope was one more note. This one was in Thomas's handwriting. She must never know he came back. Evelyn walked downstairs holding the watch. The room quieted before she spoke. Thomas saw what was in her hand, and all the warmth left his face. Their daughter Rachel frowned. "Mom." Evelyn looked at her husband in front of everyone who had just praised him. "Why was Adrian's watch in your locked drawer?" A glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered. Thomas did not move. He only said, very softly, "Not here." Evelyn looked around the room at the guests, the flowers, the birthday cake, and the life built carefully around one hidden object. Then she said, "You had 35 years to choose where to tell me the truth." Thomas closed his eyes, and in that silence, Evelyn knew the worst answer before he gave it. Adrian had not simply left. Someone had made sure she believed he did. After the guests left, the house felt larger than it ever had. Plates sat half-cleared on the dining table. The birthday cake remained untouched, 60 small candles lying beside it like a joke no one had finished telling. Thomas stood by the fireplace, hands in his pockets. Evelyn placed the watch on the table between them. "Talk." He looked at it, as if the watch were alive. Adrian came back 12 years after he left. Evelyn gripped the edge of the table. "He didn't leave." Thomas said nothing. "Say it." His jaw tightened. "He did not leave the way you were told." The sentence entered the room quietly, but it destroyed everything loudly. Evelyn remembered herself at 25, standing by the window every night because she believed heartbreak might reverse itself if she stayed awake long enough. She remembered Thomas arriving with groceries, sitting with her mother, telling her Adrian was gone, but she was not alone. She had married Thomas 2 years later, not because she stopped loving Adrian, because she had grown tired of loving a ghost. "What did you do?" she asked. Thomas sat down slowly. "There was a fire at the Harbor Theater." "I know." Everyone knew. The old theater had burned the night Adrian vanished. Adrian had been blamed for stealing money from the office before the fire, but the owner never pressed charges. The town whispered that he ran before the police could ask questions. Thomas stared at the flames. "I was there that night." Evelyn's breath changed. "So was Adrian. So was your father." "My father?" Thomas nodded. "Your father found me drunk in the back room. I had knocked over a lamp. The curtains caught. I panicked." Evelyn could barely understand him. "Adrian pulled me out." Thomas's voice broke. "He saved my life. And you let everyone blame him." "Your father did." "My father was dead 8 years later. You had 27 more." Thomas flinched. "He said Adrian would ruin you. He said if people knew I started the fire, my family would be ruined too. He told Adrian that if he loved you, he would take the blame quietly and disappear before your name was dragged into scandal." Evelyn whispered, and Adrian agreed. "He came to see you first." The room tilted. "What?" "He came to your house at 9:17. He had the watch. He wanted to tell you everything. Your father stopped him at the door." Evelyn looked down at the watch. "Stopped at 9:17. Thomas continued. "Your father told him you were inside crying because you hated him. He said you never wanted to see him again." "That was a lie." "I know." "You knew?" Thomas covered his face. Evelyn stood so quickly her chair struck the floor. "Did you know then?" "Yes." The word was small. It was unforgivable. She slapped him. Not hard enough to injure. Hard enough to mark the moment. Thomas did not defend himself. "He came back 12 years later," Thomas said. "I met him at the train station." "Why?" "He asked for your address." Evelyn's voice became calm in a way that frightened even her. "And you gave it to him?" Thomas looked at her. "No." She laughed once. It sounded nothing like laughter. "He had a letter for you," Thomas said. "I told him you were happy, that we had a daughter, that coming back would only break what he had already broken. You lied. I protected our family. You protected yourself." His eyes filled. "I loved you." "No," Evelyn said. "You loved the version of me that did not know she had been robbed." She picked up the photograph of Adrian. There was a sign behind him in the picture. "Seaside Motel, Room 9. Evelyn took the car keys from the hook by the door. Thomas stood. "Where are you going?" She turned back. "To find out whether any part of my life was ever mine." He stepped toward her. "Evelyn, he may not even be alive." She looked at the watch in her hand. "Then I'll grieve the truth instead of living with your lie." Thomas did not follow her. Maybe because he knew he had no right. Or maybe because, after 35 years, the locked drawer had finally opened, and even he could not force it closed again. The Seaside Motel looked like a place memory went when it had nowhere else to stay. Blue doors, rusted railings, a broken ice machine humming in the corner. Beyond the parking lot, the ocean moved under a dark sky, restless and black. Evelyn stood outside room 9 with Adrian's watch in her palm. For several minutes, she did not knock. She had imagined this man dead, married, bitter, changed beyond recognition. She had imagined him cruel, because cruelty had been easier than longing. But now, standing at the door, she understood that the real terror was not that Adrian might be gone. It was that he might still be Adrian. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again. An old woman opened the door. Evelyn's heart fell. I'm sorry, she said. I'm looking for Adrian Vale. The woman looked at the watch in Evelyn's hand. Then her expression changed. You're Evelyn. Not a question. Evelyn could not speak. The woman stepped aside. He said you might come one day. Inside, the room was small but clean. On the table were carved wooden boxes, old photographs, and a stack of postcards tied with green string. I'm June, the woman said. Adrian was my brother. Was. The word landed before Evelyn could protect herself. He died last winter, June said gently. Evelyn sat down because her legs forgot their purpose. He waited a long time to see you, June continued. Then one day he stopped calling it waiting and started calling it surviving. Tears came without sound. June placed a wooden box on the table. He left this for you. Inside was a letter. Ellie, if you are reading this, then Thomas finally lost his grip on the truth, or you finally became brave enough to take it from him. I came back twice. The first time, I was young enough to believe truth could beat powerful men. It could not. The second time, I was old enough to know better, but still foolish enough to hope. Thomas told me you were happy. I believed him because I saw you through the diner window with your little girl. You were laughing. Maybe it was only one moment, but I decided I had no right to disturb it. That was my mistake. People think leaving is always cowardice. Sometimes staying away is cowardice wearing kindness. I loved you, Ellie. Not perfectly, not bravely enough, but truly. If your life has been good, keep it. If it has been a beautiful cage, open the door. But do not come looking for the girl you were with me. She is gone. Find the woman they tried to keep from becoming whole. Evelyn held the letter to her chest. June handed her one more object, a tiny key. He kept the studio near the old train bridge. Said if you ever came, you should choose what to do with it. Evelyn drove there at dawn. The studio was full of carved boxes, unfinished chairs, and paintings of green ribbons tied around open doors. On one wall hung a photograph of her at 24. She did not know when Adrian had taken it. She was standing at the train station, laughing at something outside the frame. Beneath it, he had written, "The life I did not get to live still made me kinder because I once imagined it with her." Evelyn cried then. Not because she wanted to be young again. Because she understood she had spent decades treating grief like a grave when it had really been a locked room. 3 months later, Eleanor filed for separation. The town called it dramatic. Her daughter called it late but honest. Thomas wrote letters. She read some, burned others. In the spring, Evelyn opened a small shop in Adrian's old studio. She called it 917, not because time had stopped there, because it had finally started again. On opening day, Thomas came. He looked smaller than before. I know I have no right to ask, he said, but may I come in? Evelyn looked at the door, then at him. Behind her, the silver watch ticked in a glass case. She had found someone to repair it. I don't know yet, she said. Thomas nodded and turned to leave. Then a bell rang behind her. Someone else had entered through the back door. Evelyn turned. The video ends before we see who it is. Some people say it was June, bringing one more letter. Some say it was Thomas, finally walking in through the right door. Others believe it was no one from the past at all. But on the counter of the shop, beside the ticking watch, there was a small sign Evelyn had written by hand. It said, "I lost 35 years to a lie. I will not lose one more day waiting for someone else to tell me who I am."